Raptors trade reports continue to escalate as new news has come out from Charania of The Athletic that gives a really interesting deep dive into the current situations of Pascal Siakam as well as OG Anunoby. And yes, we hear some familiar names. Yes, we kind of get some details in terms of what's going on behind the scenes from Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster, their thoughts on this entire process. But following the Raptors' brutal loss to the New York Knicks last night, where again, sure, it's not a massive margin where the Raptors lose, but the hope just seems to be drained out of the fans of the Toronto Raptors, and it feels like the players as well. And basically right now, we're going to not only look at the potential suitors, but what would really lead to the best possible outcome for this Toronto Raptors team if we were to make a trade? Because right now, it's probably the biggest issue, the biggest problem the Raptors have to deal with is not only that we're mid, not only that we are one of the teams that are, in the lower echelon of the Eastern Conference, we don't have our draft pick for this upcoming season. So the fact that we are going to have to make some trades, make some decisions with that dark cloud looming over our head is really going to put Masai Ujiri in a tough spot. So let's just first dive into this report from Shams. It's basically, he came out and said that under new head coach Darko Rajokovic, the Raptors hoped that they had a more team-first, free-flowing style would lead to more success. There's been a strong belief in the trio of Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby across every level of the organization, and officials were confident that a new style of play would lead to success and victories. And there'll be no more selfishness this year, as Masai Ujiri said at the preseason press conference. And this is a very interesting quote from Shams, because obviously we'll get into the teams, the suitors, and stuff along those lines. But the Raptors genuinely believed Nick Nurse was really the problem. They essentially thought that, hey, Dennis Schroeder for Fred VanVleet will keep us kind of level. We have the talent on this roster, which frankly, I don't blame them in sort of feeling. A trio of OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, there's a reason, particularly OG and Siakam are throwing out a bunch of trade rumors, is because they are really strong players. So I get why the front office sort of believes in that trio, believes in that core, but the thought process of a head coach that sure may have lost the air of the locker room, I get all that type of stuff, but one of the best coaches in the NBA and Nick Nurse, and maybe it was time to move on from him. Whatever your beliefs on that, I'm not going to criticize the take, it probably was time to move on from him, but it is legitimate fact that Nick Nurse is one of the top coaches in the NBA, but the belief that the front office could just fire Nick Nurse, bring in a new coach, change the vibes is very interesting. It's clearly how things played out, but it's interesting to hear that validated by Shams. But he went on to say basically in this article that teams such as the Atlanta Hawks, the Sacramento Kings, and Indiana Pacers are expected for suitors for Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, but believe Siakam appears to be the likelier player to be dealt. And again, we've made videos on all of these teams, the Hawks, the Kings, the Indiana Pacers, as really the teams that are trying to sneak their way in to steal away one of our top stars. And obviously the packages, each of these teams have some interesting players, particularly Benedict Mathurin from the Indiana Pacers and Keegan Murray from the Sacramento Kings. Again, Raptors fans are sort of the mindset, hey, if we're giving up a guy, it's more likely to be trading Pascal Siakam, an all-NBA dude, and the teams like the Pacers, the Kings, believe that they can re-sign these guys, then you're going to have to give us some serious value back. So we want the Keegan Murrays of the world. We want the Mathurins. And then, you go into the Kings sort of Reddit spheres, heck, the commenters on our video, which I'm sure we'll get maybe on this one. I don't know if there's going to be a Kings logo or something in the thumbnail, but, they're coming in saying, you guys are crazy. You guys are off your rocker. You guys are bananas if you think we will give up Keegan Murray and Benedict Mathurin or these types of players. So, it's going to be interesting to see how Masai Ujiri's trade negotiation skills are going to be polished off, because we haven't really made one of these big blockbuster deals. And the recent trades that we have been making are all seemingly with the San Antonio Spurs. And each time it looks like we got on the wrong end of that. Even though Jakob Poeltl is a good player, this pick that we lost this season is brutal. A big W for the San Antonio Spurs, but we'll talk about that later in the video. But again, these three teams are fairly interesting there from, as Shams mentioned. He goes on to say that sources tell The Athletic, Siakam, who's 29, is currently earning $37.9 million per year in the last year of his contract, while OG Anunoby is only making $19.9 million as a player option for next season, which he'll almost assuredly decline as he enters free agency. So that's what Shams is saying. He went on to say that around the league, many expect the Raptors to scan their options until the trade deadline. So don't expect a deal. The reports that have come out, obviously this is the time of year around December, especially right before that December 15th date where a lot of NBA guys are now eligible to be traded. This is when the rumors start to percolate. Deals rarely happen around this time, but this is where we really get a feel of the teams that are going to be in the conversation, the teams that are going to be finalists, and then if deals actually go down, the teams that generally get the guys. Obviously, we have situations like the Milwaukee Bucks sneaking in for Damian Lillard, right, where teams come out of left field. Generally, we get a feel from these rumors, from these reports and stuff like that are going to be involved into the mix. So, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, I personally am of the stance, given all the reports that we've heard, I think OG Anunoby will stay. Masai Ujiri will take that risk entering free agency and try to re-sign him next year, while he'll be more likely to get rid of Pascal and potentially Gary Trent Jr. at this year's trade deadline. But that's sort of, the December 12th, recording of this video, that's sort of my feel at this point. As new reports sort of emerge and the Raptors continue to lose more games or win some more games, things could definitely change. The Raptors are in an extremely volatile situation right now, so it's interesting to see. But as mentioned, the Raptors are currently on a little 4-game losing streak, and basically where the Raptors are currently at, we talked about last week how the next 20 games, and this is right before this losing streak sort of went down, but the next 20 games are for, I guess now 16 games for the Raptors, are really going to be indicative of what's going to happen to the future of this franchise, because frankly, with these free agents, everything that's going on, it doesn't make sense for the Raptors to dish out insane money while we are not even in a playoff position. We're not even in a play-in position right now. So right now, if you look in the playoff sort of picture, the Raptors are 11th in the Eastern Conference, and we are falling. We are going down. The Chicago Bulls are on a little win. Well, they lost last night to the Milwaukee Bucks, but they've been playing a lot better without Zach LaVine, and they're a team that seems interested in building around, not completely tearing it down, not completely nuking their roster, even though they want to deal away Zach LaVine. There's rumors that the Sixers and the Lakers now are major suitors. The Raptors have sort of fallen out of that mix, but the Bulls are kind of rising in the standings. You can look at it here as well. The Charlotte Hornets, who beat us a couple of days ago, right? Even though they lost LaMelo Ball, they have some interesting pieces that could potentially win games. Now, the Atlanta Hawks are an interesting squad because they've been losing as of late, but that might make them a little bit more desperate. That might make them more interested in a trade because they do have their drafts, so maybe they want to go down, but they have a roster of Trae Young, DeJounte Murray. They have a lot of guys sort of built to be more win now. And while the Raptors are in a similar spot, the Hawks don't really have one of those Scotty Barnes-esque players to look toward the future and say, hey, this is the direction that we can go. So the Hawks, I feel like, be more likely to be buyers to build around this core rather than the Raptors, who it seems like are in a very similar position in the standings, will be more likely to sort of make some deals. But basically, if you look at the sort of tankathon, everything along those lines, we have to get to the bottom 7 odds if we want to have a chance at keeping our draft, or if we want to keep our draft pick. So ideally, the lower we get in the standings, if we are going to bottom out, if we are going to go into that direction, we have to sort of catch some of these teams. And there's no world right now, I feel like, where we catch Detroit, San Antonio, Washington. Heck, even Portland's going to be a tough team to really catch in sort of the tanking standings. And really, if we could get into the bottom 4, if we are tanking, if we are going in that direction, that would be ideal, because that would, I believe, guarantee us our draft pick. If we're in the bottom 3, it's very likely there as well. But the bottom 4, yeah. So it's those are 4 teams that are unlikely to catch. Now, you look at it now, and it's looking, I hate saying it looks better for the Toronto Raptors, the bottom of the standings, if we are making that race, but that's the wording. We're going to look at it for the lottery simulator. But basically, the Bulls look like they could potentially jump us if they continue to win some games with Zach LaVine out. The Charlotte Hornets, again, are a roster that's fairly interesting. It feels like the Utah Jazz are also in a position where they might deal away Lauri Markkanen and try to bottom out now. And then Memphis, with Ja Morant likely returning, I feel like they're a team that we could definitely surpass in these tankathon standings. So realistically, if the Raptors do bottom out, we're probably going to be around the 6th spot, the 5th spot in terms of the lottery sort of situation, which, again, is extremely risky. It is really sort of a tough spot to be in because one or two teams jump up in sort of those those positionings, those rankings in the NBA draft lottery, then the Raptors are done for. We have a bottom 7 pick that goes straight to San Antonio. So it's that's something that has to get factored in, those odds. If Masai Ujiri's gonna bottom out, we have to bottom out. We should try to win no games for the rest of the season. But again, then that affects culture, that affects this, that affects that. But right now, the roster as constructed does not look like a team that can make the playoff picture. Now, maybe we could have a situation like we had in 2014 where we dealt away Rudy Gay. It seemed like we might trade away Lowry, might trade away DeMar DeRozan. Masai is going to blow it up. And then a new era of Raptors basketball happens where you have the greatest era in Toronto Raptors basketball history. Maybe we could have a situation like that. Masai Ujiri's done it before, but frankly, it is not looking good for this roster. He's going to need to pull some rabbits out of his hat because right now things are getting really ugly. But let me know what you guys think about all this Toronto Raptors news. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.